Welcome to News, Games, and More. What if, oh my God, I was going to make a stupid joke, but now it's already out of my mouth almost, so I'll just say it before I introduce everyone. But what if, we're talking about news and games, and we are the more? Like, versus talking about more than news and games. It's like news, games, and more. It's all of us. And speaking of all of us, I'm Cindy Goodman. I'm interrupting John Ryan, Ryan Altano, and we have Tom Marks.
I think it's easier than being news or games, right? I don't want to be news or games.
I mean, I could be being games.
If you're like scandalous, then you're like, you are the news, like when celebrities are, I don't know what they do to make the news. They're like yell at people or sign onto a movie, then they're the news.
You could be good news.
You could be good news, but I'm just thinking, I guess when people make headlines, it's usually like, it's not usually for good things. I don't know.
That's
maybe
true.
it is. Wasn't there good news?
You could be a bad game.
You could be a bad game. And on that note, I am getting anxious because I feel like we just had a conversation about staying on topic, and then they asked me to host, and this is what's happening. So let's just start off. Marvel's Avengers adds even more PlayStation exclusives besides Spider-Man. So yesterday, it was announced that PlayStation owners will get Spider-Man as an exclusive hero for Marvel's Avengers. And then today, Crystal Dynamics detailed more console exclusives coming to PlayStation in a new blog post, including timed exclusive cosmetics and PlayStation exclusive community challenges. Now, when I first read that, I thought that PlayStation was only getting community challenges. That is not the case. And if you didn't know, community challenges are events where players work together to unlock rewards for everyone. There's a new challenge monthly. And this announcement is basically that PlayStation players will have exclusive access to exclusive community challenges that will unlock exclusive specific rewards for PlayStation players. We got some more details about cosmetics. Rarities divided into uncommon, rare, epic, and legendary. Cosmetics include skins as well as takedowns, emotes, and nameplates. And this is interesting. So PlayStation players will have a 30-day exclusive access to a legendary outfit, legendary emote, epic takedown, and nameplate for each superhero as they're released, including the 6 launch heroes. Now, why I think that is interesting is because, and I will open this up to everyone and your, I guess, initial reactions. Let's start. Anybody want to take the bait, or I'll start? JR.
I guess it's me. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I'm a little behind the curve on this story, but I think from seeing all of this, like, it seems like a lot of the Marvel's Avengers marketing has been almost exclusively done via PlayStation. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see, I mean, at least I'm hopeful that we'll see similar exclusive challenges and stuff for other platforms. I know that's a ton of work for the development team, though, so I would kind of be a little surprised if that were the case, but I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt and hope that this isn't just like everyone has the game here that we're making, and then there's like this pile of extra treasure for Sony.
Yeah. The thing about this to me is like this sort of exclusivity doesn't bother me nearly as much as the Spider-Man thing that we learned about yesterday. Where yesterday the news came out, right, just to recap real quick, that Spider-Man would be exclusive to PlayStation owners. Where that, I'm sure we talked about it on the show yesterday, but Jonathan Dornbush wrote this really good article about how that's a really good thing, like business-wise for Sony, but it's not a good thing for players. And one of his key points in there that I really agree with is that, like, locking off Spider-Man means that, like, okay, with future story content, does that mean that, like, what is the story just not really going to address Spider-Man ever? Because if the story addresses Spider-Man on PS4 and then he's not in the game for Xbox and PC, that's really weird. Like, that's, I think, exclusivity that really causes issues. Whereas this exclusivity where it's just like everyone's getting community challenges, but there's going to be some special ones for PlayStation, and everyone is getting cosmetics, but there's going to be some free ones for PlayStation.
Right.
Like, that still annoys me because it's like, I think exclusivity, although not a new concept by any means, is like an annoying one for players, even if it makes business sense. But like, this is also less egregious content exclusivity in my eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My thing is, like, why didn't they just announce this yesterday when everybody was already mad? Like,
Yeah.
They announced that one platform was getting an exclusive character, and it's Spider-Man and PlayStation. And I think that like Sony is doing a pretty strong job of making you associate PlayStation with Spider-Man, who is the most recognized comic book character on Earth. Suck it, Superman, I guess. And so people were pissed off and people were furious, and they're like canceling pre-orders and stuff like that. And people are like, "Why would I ever buy it on Xbox now? I hate you guys." They got it all out of their system, and like they went to bed. Maybe had some tea and like calm down. And then this morning they wake up and Crystal Dynamics is like, "Hey, guess what? We're back with another big middle finger to you." And they're like, "What?
You were done being mad? Guess what?"
Yeah. It's like you just had enough time to meditate, decompress, and then you're furious all over again.
So that was like that was my exact same reaction when I saw this. Was I was like, "Oh, this is interesting." Like everyone was pretty like upset. Well, okay, people who are set aside like the console warriors who like were like very like Sony Xbox whatever, but like everyone kind of got over the fact that it's like, oh man, exclusives, like they're kind of a bummer for the consumer, like not very fun. And then, like why? I don't know, maybe they just figure they're gonna bite the bullet now and then kind of like forget about it later, like the closer we get to launch, versus like drawing out the frustration.
I think that could be part of it, but also remember, this is not a game that how do I put this delicately, has had a very good track record with its marketing so far. This is a game that when they first showed it at E3 last year, everyone was like, what are you doing? Like it was a disaster, right? So like I don't necessarily think like this is the worst blunder they've ever made in terms of optics.
For sure.
I think I feel like they're gonna wake up tomorrow and do this again.
I mean, that's the thing, though, right? Where it's like the only question left is what about everybody else? And like now, because they've spent 2 days on this, they have to answer the question: what happens to people playing on Xbox? What happens to people playing on PC? And like, if the answer is nothing, sorry, then now they've really kind of screwed the pooch by having it be a 2-day news cycle instead of just a single one. But
we saw similar things with like Destiny, right? Where like Destiny had stuff on PS or had stuff on PlayStation that didn't come to the other systems for like a year or something.
It was a while, because I was Call of Duty, and I mean it used to be flopped. Like back in the day, COD would get maps on Halo and get the DLC, or on Halo would get maps on Xbox and get the DLC before PlayStation would.
Right.
But I mean, what do we think about the possibility of Spider-Man being a launch window? Do we think that because they're doing a launch window for the legendary outfits and the emotes, takedowns, etc. for the superheroes, but do we think they would have already announced it if Spider-Man had like an exclusivity window?
Oh, like a timed exclusive?
Time exclusive.
Maybe.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, so you got to put him on the box, right?
Like is it going to be on?
To a point. I mean
that's the different. You can tack a couple extra million sales if you put Spider-Man on the box. If kids see Spider-Man or the digital JPEG, storefront image, whatever that is. Like you got to put him there on the PlayStation version. Like maybe I'm old school. I'm thinking about like the way they used to do stuff like Soul Calibur and like where you like there would be an exclusive character per system, and that character would be on the box.
Yeah, I want Darth Vader. I don't want Yoda.
Yeah, I actually wanted Yoda in that situation. So,
I mean, all right.
That's a funny thing, though, because I don't think that they could put Spider-Man on the box anytime this, like, in the first year of the launch, right? Because he's not coming until, like, Q1, Q2 of 2021.
Like, at the earliest.
Yeah, so, like, could they put Spider-Man on the box for the PlayStation version, and then you buy the game and Spider-Man's not in it? Like,
I mean, you could.
Yeah, no, anything is possible, Tom.
I guess. No, I don't know. I mean, I feel like they might have already said if he was a timed exclusive, but at the same time, like maybe they just want to own this marketing beat, right? And be like, this is a Sony thing, and then they'll bring it up later. Like we've seen similar things, right? With like, Death Stranding was a Sony exclusive until it wasn't, and like we've seen that a lot where games will be announced as an exclusive for not just PlayStation but like any console, and then it'll be like eventually they're like, oh yeah, by the way, this is coming elsewhere. So like we might see that. Spider-Man seems like a huge character to not do that with.
Well, because that's the thing. Like I feel like it has to go to other platforms at some point, because like the amount of effort that it takes on the development side to like not only design the look of a character, but like how it plays, how it balances with everybody else. Like, and because Spider-Man's powers specifically are like very unique, like web swinging and flipping and web sticky stuff and Spidey senses, like, you know, Spider-Man powers.
What
like those are so
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. What I will say is the new content that they just announced being exclusive, I don't think we'll ever see that on other platforms. Like, I think the little challenges, the cosmetics, that sort of stuff, that's PlayStation locked, and it's going to be PlayStation locked.
Yeah. What was like really frustrating about this whole thing was their press release was basically like, how cool would it be to see a Spider-Man video game? Everyone would love to see Spider-Man the character, but in a video game. We went back to the original Steve Ditko drawings to see what Spider-Man the video game would look like, and we were like, we got that 2 years ago. And it was great. Literally know exactly what that looks like. You guys are pretending it doesn't exist. Like the legal minefield around, instead of just being like, fans of Insomniac Spider-Man, which you played 2 years ago, we know it, will be excited to see that Spider-Man is returning in this new game where he's not the same character anymore. Because this is not Insomniac Spider-Man, and this isn't the MCU's Spider-Man, and this is not the MCU's Avengers. They're like this weird off-brand Avengers. So like the legal rights around this suck. It's like that's the number one Marvel villain is a lawyer.
It's so funny too when like Yuri Lowenthal, the voice of Spider-Man in Insomniac Spider-Man, played Spider-Man in Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 for the Switch, and like that version of Spider-Man wasn't directly linked in any way, but it was like basically the same Spider-Man. And now Avengers is getting a different Spider-Man, even though there's a new Spider-Man game coming out later this year. Also,
well, it was like when they did Marvel vs. Capcom, and they put out the sequel, and everyone was like, "All right, so you got the X-Men, right?" And they're like, "No, not this time." Why? It was hard. We had to call a guy. He was rich, and he said no, and then we said no, and we're just making it without him. But you guys understand, right? And we're like, "No, we don't care. Sort it out. Like, we just want to buy your video game."
So on that note, I have two comments here, and they are kind of different sides of the coin, we'll say. So Game Royalty 52 said exclusivity is nothing new. Whole games have been exclusive to one system. People dealt with it. Getting bent out of shape, reaching with comparisons, and blaming Sony does nothing. Exclusivity isn't going anywhere, and it will happen in different forms. All the whining in the world won't make it go away or force them to make Spider-Man available for everyone. You're going to have to do what every other gamer from every other gen, past and present, had to do when this happens. I'm not sure what that is. But Dr. True 7
means deal with it.
Oh, okay. That was a lot.
Or buy a bunch of consoles.
Yeah, okay. Well, Dr. True 1797 said, imagine if theaters did this and were able to show exclusive scenes in the theater just because they paid to have it. And then other theaters don't get the full movie because they didn't fork over the big bucks to get the exclusive scenes. Nice. Good job, Sony, for fracturing gamers and gaming over corporate greed. If it was Microsoft doing this, they should be criticized just the same.
So, Sid, were you and I talking about this recently? That movie Clue?
We were.
Yeah. That movie,
the old Tim Curry movie?
Yeah.
This movie had exclusive endings like scattered throughout different theaters, so people got different endings, and people didn't know which one they were going to get, so they just didn't go to the theater. And so that's how that worked for the movie.
Coming on purpose.
Yeah.
Clue did that, and it was part of the reason Clue bombed.
Yeah. But now, if you watch it, because here's the thing, Clue is a great movie, and you should absolutely watch it, because now it's not okay. Great is maybe a bit of an understatement, but like it's fun.
It's a treasure. Okay,
there it is. It's a classic. But the cool thing about Clue is that like now you get it packaged. This is a Clue show now. This is entirely about Clue.
I'm so sorry. I'm gonna get fired.
No, but to bring it back to this point, like. You know, I feel like people saying like if we could make movies exclusive to theaters, like if Disney had the ability to go buy all like half of the AMCs now that they're all closing, and they probably super would if they could, and be like, well, you got to come to see this theater because we're only giving half the movie to, you know, Fandango's. I forget what other movie chains are. But like, Cinemark, exactly. Yeah. Like Cinemark doesn't have the fourth act of Star Wars 19. sorry. Like
there were a lot of fanboys that were really mad when Clue came out, and the Mr. Potts killing
fanboys.
The guy in the basement with the candlestick was an AMC exclusive feature. They were really pissed about that. They were in the YouTube chat and everything. It was like 100 years before
the real quick, if I may respond to the first comment, though.
Yeah, for sure.
Game Royalty 52 with the whole like exclusivity is nothing new. This has always been a thing. That's totally true, but like I totally reject the kind of take on this that this has always been the case. This is nothing new. Therefore, put up with it and deal with it. I think that's not fair because the truth is exclusivity is nothing new. It's always been a thing. We've had to deal with it. And from the consumer side, from the game playing side, it has always sucked. It has never been a good thing. So like the idea that people are finally coming around to this idea of like, you know what, maybe we should be mad about this. Like this is stupid. And like, I don't like this and are being vocal about that. Like I'm totally for that because it has always been lame unless you either own the lucky system or are the person selling that system. Right? Yeah. Like those are the people this benefits. So to be like, oh, it's always been this way, just put up with it. It's like, no, like if this is annoying, like we should be vocal about that because I think it will potentially harm the game as a whole because of it.
And here's the thing with the deal with it crowd, we will, but one day it'll come for you. Like one day a thing you really are excited for will vanish from your fingertips and then you'll have to deal with it. And that's all part of it. But there's a lot of gloating over this. I find that childish and stupid, but that's just me personally. Because, the thing is, I don't profit directly off of this game sales or any game sales. So personally, this doesn't do anything for me. I'm also not super interested in this game to begin with. But if this becomes the best-selling version of it, I'm not going to get a check. And like there's a lot of people in the YouTube comments being like, suck it, Xbox fans. And like they're like, okay, well, like you're not getting money off of this. Like you get to play Spider-Man, but you already got to play Spider-Man on PlayStation. It's probably the better Spider-Man. You're also going to play another better Spider-Man when it launches with PS5 this fall, which I guarantee you is going to be better than whatever this, when he shows up as the Avengers cousin for 5 minutes in this game. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Avengers. Yeah, I'm curious if like the storyline on this is the last thing I'll say before we move on, unless somebody else has any other closing thoughts. Clue. I'm curious. I'm curious what how he's going to be written out of any of the other platform versions. If it's going to be like Spider-Man's on vacation or well, does he because they can't just pretend he's not.
He dies with the rest of the Avengers.
I hope in the other versions he's either just like the wind or like a bird.
It's Clue.
Yeah.
That's on topic.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, so what you're seeing here is some of the content that was released exclusively on the PlayStation 5 version of Clue when it originally launched back in 1980 something or 70. Okay. I don't care.
Fascinatingly enough, the Xbox version didn't have Martin Mull as Colonel Mustard.
Yeah,
it was actually Wilford Brimley.
See, right there, when you saw the ironing board fall out on the Xbox version, it just stayed up the whole time. So people were really pissed about that now.
On that note, speaking of Xbox, what a fantastic segue. I'm going to my job. Let me keep hosting. Project xCloud will be available on Xbox Game Pass starting September 15th. So this was announced today in a new blog post that Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscribers will get to begin streaming select titles to their smartphones and tablets through Project xCloud starting September 15th at no additional cost, baby. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate includes Game Pass, but you also get the console and the PC Game Pass libraries, Xbox Live Gold, and now xCloud. And Ultimate is only $15. I mean, only is relative, but it's $15 a month, which to me feels like a pretty good deal considering everything that's included. Project xCloud is Xbox's foray into cloud streaming, so it allows users to stream games directly to a smartphone or tablet, which is technology that still really confuses my brain. But everything will be tied to your Xbox account, including achievements, friends, game saves, progression, player profile, and controller settings will carry over with Xbox Game Pass app. There will be over 100 titles from Xbox Game Pass's library ready to play at launch. However, the full catalog has yet to be revealed. But for now, they did let us know that Gears 5 Ultimate Edition, Halo 5 Guardians, Hellblade, Senua's Sacrifice, Minecraft Dungeons, and Sea of Thieves are all part of that 100. Also was announced, that is not a real way to talk. That's grammatically incorrect. But they also announced a series of mobile gaming accessories, which are designed to work with your mobile phones, including new controller peripherals. So I don't know, is anybody excited about cloud gaming and or xCloud?
I mean, I'm super pumped for it.
Huh. JR, let's start with you.
No, I mean, like, I think that, I really hope that streaming games is something that actually picks up and takes off, and is, because ultimately it just makes things more accessible to more players. Whether it's going through Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, which I have, so I'm excited to play Gears 5 on my phone. That seems like madness. If I even told myself like 2 years ago that was going to be the case, or a year ago, that would sound wild to me. And I think it's going to kind of, if it takes off, I think it has the potential to kind of force other competitors in the same market, Stadia, to kind of get their stuff in gear a little bit and kind of up their game. Because I've subscribed, I get the Sounders Edition of Stadia. It is in a sealed box over there, because I've still yet to see a real reason to kind of dig that out. And I'm really hoping that if Project xCloud can get enough people on board with it, we can then really see a lot of folks kind of trying to get into that game. Because I think it's going to be only good for players world over.
Yeah, I mean, this is at the very least, it's a completely inoffensive value proposition that makes the purchase that you're already hopefully doing even better, and solidifies that even more. For me personally, I like, outside of the novelty of it, I've tried so many times to be like, my phone is a video game controller, and it's not. It just never is. It never will be. It will always be sitting next to my TV or a monitor being like, what are you doing? Stop pretending. Even with those clip-on things, I've tried so many of those things that just make your phone look like an idiot. It turns it into this like 2 foot long tube with buttons on the side. But that said,
what a Switch is, though.
Hey, you know what? I'm gonna X out of this show right now.
Due to technical difficulties.
You just got
hold on. You know what? Let me just take a phone call real quick. No, totally. It's I think that's like fundamentally designed to be a video game console first. Whereas like the thing I love about the Switch is that I don't get text on it. Like in the middle of a video game, my wife's not like, "Can you go get diapers?" in Paper Mario. Maybe she is. I haven't gotten that far, but it's I think it's a cool idea. In theory, whether or not that works as something that people will use routinely, it's a different story entirely. I also think that with the world doing significantly less traveling this year, a reason to have this kind of stuff within reach is kind of not as important, because you're a lot closer to your television and your console than you probably thought you'd ever be in 2020. So that said, it's still cool.
Yeah. Tom, do you have any feelings towards this one way or the other?
I played a lot of Stadia, and to JR's point, I don't necessarily know if Stadia needed another kick in the pants, or like another reason to get their crap together. But I do think you're right that like xCloud has sort of always been lurking in the background of Stadia, right? Like as people were getting excited and then sort of fell from Stadia, right? Like there was that very clear art. That entire time, xCloud was kind of just like plugging away in the background with betas, and like the reception had always been very positive and people were saying really good things about it. So like the thing that's really exciting to me about this is in a little over a month, like xCloud is just going to be this widely available thing on mobile for people who already are paying for this service. Now suddenly they're just going to have this other thing. And like Brian said, like that's a great just like value add to what you're already paying for, to a service that is already a really good value. And I don't necessarily like, I look at some of these games and I feel the exact same way I did about Stadia, which is like, I think probably playing Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice on your phone is maybe the worst way to play any video game ever, right? Like, that is a game that should be played on a big TV with headphones. But
Also available on Nintendo Switch.
Well, I was gonna say, I bought it on a Switch. Sorry, not to derail you, Tom. I'll go back to you in a sec. But I have Senua's Sacrifice on Switch, and I just can't bring myself to play it.
Right.
But I got it for a trip, and then when I started playing, I was like, this is not how this is meant to be played.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And like, but that to the other side of that coin, there are tons of games that are great on mobile that would work totally fine. And like, you know, it seems like they're not kidding themselves about like you control it with the touchscreen, right? Like they're very clearly like, hey, attach your phone to this, play it with this, use this, don't use the phone, right? Like they want you to use that controller, which is, I think, the right way to be doing it. So it's just cool that like suddenly you're gonna have access to a lot of stuff. You know, come September 15th, you're just gonna like suddenly have a lot of games playable on a very simple device anywhere you are. Is like just really, really cool.
Yeah. I think that I actually, until JR, you said it in terms of how much it makes gaming more accessible to everyone without having to buy into a console. But theoretically, you don't have to own an Xbox to pay $15 a month and have access to this library and play it on your phone.
Yeah.
Like, that's cool.
Yeah. That's a feature too.
Right. Like, I mean, my thing, you know, for me, I'm looking forward to it because like I'm playing on a launch edition Xbox One and like it does okay, but like I feel like its probably going to give out in maybe a month or two. Like
just before holiday 2020.
Thankfully. It's getting up there in years though. And you know, it definitely doesn't run as good as it used to.
Who among us does though, really?
Definitely not me.
You need right now you either need an Xbox or a PC to play these games, and now you don't.
Yeah,
that's true.
That's cool and exciting. As confused, I think that my hesitation with cloud gaming, because I was really excited about Stadia, and I've played a little bit of Stadia, it still confuses me, to be completely honest with you. Like, I just think like the concept of cloud gaming is something that my brain, like, you know, when you think too hard and like you start getting a headache, that's happening right now when as I'm trying to understand like how technologically this works. And like, I don't know if JR or Tom, if you guys have spent very much time playing multiplayer games with Stadia, but do you notice, is that an issue playing off of the cloud and playing multiplayer?
It depends. It depends on both the game. Like, you're going to notice more on like Mortal Kombat 11, like that needs really, really precise timing of things. You're going to notice a little bit more than you would of a puzzle game or like any other sort of multiplayer game that doesn't really matter about timing as much. The thing that I haven't used xCloud a lot, so I can't speak to that. But the thing that always impressed me about Stadia and cloud gaming kind of as it is in 2020 in general is it is remarkably latency free until the moment that it isn't, right? Like that's always the thing that I said about Stadia is like Stadia is incredible until it's not, and then when it's not, it's really not. And like that's sort of the trade-off you get with cloud gaming is that we're getting to this point where like they can run it totally well, especially with single player games. Like co-op or multiplayer, like you're saying, is you need a little bit more kind of precision, but like a single player game, you can be a little less precise and you'll really just enjoy it until the moment you hit a lag spike or your Wi-Fi cuts and drops a little bit, and then suddenly everything freezes up for a few seconds, and then you're back in the game. And that's like something that just never, unless the game is completely buggy, never happens out of the cloud. Yeah.
It is very clear here, more and more every single day, it's readily abundant that Microsoft is playing a very different game here. And people keep repeating that like it's a buzzword, but it's true. I mean, they are ultimately after your $10 to $15 a month. And I think they want that more than you buying 2 or 3 games a year.
Yeah.
Will that pan out? Who knows? I think like ultimately you're going to see the PS5 will sell a lot more consoles. But do they care? I'm not sure. Like, to me, it's like, do third parties still look at the business model of like there are 50 million PS5s in the wild versus 20 million Xbox Series X's? Which should we develop for? Or do they go, you know, there's good value for us to put our game on Game Pass additionally with everything else because we'll make X amount a month. We've been told basically repeatedly by like senior people at Xbox, like every time anyone asks, how do people make money off of Game Pass? How do developers make money off of that? The answer is always like, don't worry about it. You know, that's our problem, you know? And I don't know. Ultimately, I do want to support developers, and so like it is strange. But if times are tough and $15 a month gets you infinite games or whatever their version of infinite is across a plethora of platforms, then that's a pretty awesome deal. And so I don't know. I think there's something there.
Mm-hmm.
And you do reports from developers, just as a quick tangent, you do hear reports from developers of being like, we went on Game Pass, and the month after we went on Game Pass, our sales quadrupled, right?
Yep.
Like, it seems to be that there's at least hope that it won't just like give them the shaft either.
Yeah, Game Pass is not a dead end street. People use it to basically infer their purchases. Like they'll play a game for an hour and be like, I'm buying this. So totally.
Yeah. Well, speaking of inferring purchases, we can infer that Mulan will be released in theaters on Disney Plus in September.
That was good. It's bad, but it's good.
But so Disney announced during investors call on Tuesday that the studio will release. Oh my gosh, I did not think this was ever going to happen. Their delayed live action retelling of Mulan that will probably disappoint me in both theaters and on Disney Plus on September 4th. Now, obviously, we know how movie theaters work, so we won't talk too much about that. Plus, there wasn't much information beyond that little cluster of words. But it will cost an additional $29.99 to rent it on Disney Plus, regardless of if you subscribe to the subscription service. And I'm not sure if any of you have this information, but do you have to be a subscriber to Disney Plus in order to purchase it?
You do? Yeah. I don't even think there's a way to sort of get past the front end without logging in. I mean,
so
maybe
it's more than $29.99 theoretically, if you don't already.
Yeah, it's plus whatever you're paying per month, or if you paid per year. I imagine you could also sign up for like a free 7-day trial or something if they do stuff like that. Yeah, I have to imagine that this is happening with Black Widow next. I don't know if that's even been announced yet, but.
No, there was a trolling, fake, unverified Disney Plus account that said that Black Widow is doing it as well, that a lot of people fell for, but it has not been announced for anything but Mulan.
Mulan's an interesting one because there was a red carpet for this movie. This movie premiered in theaters for press, and then COVID happened like the next day. I think even that day they were like, "Oh, this is sketchy. I don't know if we should do it anyway. Come on over."
It was in like March, right?
Yeah, people have seen this movie. This was in like the beginning of March, and then a week later, everything went into shutdown.
I hope it's good. I am just I think I need to change my expectations of it, because I love, like, I dressed as Mulan like 4 years in a row. That might have to do with the fact that it was like one of the only Asian princesses, and then I was like, oh, okay. But I love that movie. It's fantastic. The music is fantastic, but there will be no music in this. I'm trying to temper my expectations that this is going to be like a martial arts film, which I love martial arts films, so maybe it will impress me on that front. But where Disney Plus isn't available, meant to read this earlier, it will release in theaters on the same day. And another movie that's been riddled with delays is Tenet. Now, this isn't super new information, but it will premiere internationally on August 27th before coming to North American theaters on September 3rd. The reason why I bring that up is, do we think that this is setting a precedent beyond the pandemic? Like, are we going to see kind of, not necessarily day and date, but see a very small window between theatrical releases and then paying a premium for rental on digital?
Yes. Yeah. I think you're going to see that shorten more than ever. I think what's crazy is that some countries will get brand new movies and America won't. But and I'm going to get in trouble for this. I don't know if America deserves brand new movies right now, because we really screwed this year up.
Okay, I was going to say I should have worn a mask, but I stopped myself. If there's two of us, they can't go after both of us.
That's true. That they will.
Well, there's enough. That wasn't like, I'm not tempting you. Please don't.
No. Yeah. It's just I like other countries that have theaters opening, and maybe have squashed this thing a little bit better than America has, are going to get movies, and people who live in those countries are going to spoil Tenet for everybody else. And
I didn't even think about that.
That's what's going to happen. I mean, there was also that deal with Universal and AMC to essentially shorten the window between theatrical and home release. And so I think that ultimately benefits in Universal's favor, but they were beefing when they put, Trolls out on home video.
Trolls World Tour.
like a CEO at AMC was like, "Oh, we're not going to work with Universal anymore," and it's like, "Oh, really? You're not going to have the Jurassic Park franchise and the Fast and Furious franchise and James Bond? You're just going to not have those in your theaters anymore?" Okay. Well, because they're going to still make those movies, so they can still profit off of them.
This is definitely. I think we're going to see a lot more of this. Especially, we're going to see a lot more of this before it gets. It's going to get worse before it gets better, so to speak, in that term. Like, this is the thing you got to understand with the movie industry, and I think a lot of people do get this. So it's not like revelatory information. Is like games can hit delays and then still release digitally, and everyone can still play them, and the industry will survive that. Movies like don't exist right now, right? Like it's like an entire. Like, you can't just take an entire industry and say, don't release anything new for a year. Okay, in a year, we want you to be the exact same and be alive, right? That can't functionally happen, especially with an industry as large as film, right? So like. This doesn't. I think there was always sort of momentum towards digital releases and towards more like shorter releases in movie theaters, that sort of thing. There was always that momentum towards those ideas. But like this pandemic has forced a ton of hands into like, all right, you got to figure out a way that works right now. And you got to experiment with Trolls and Scoob because we're getting towards the Mulans and Black Widows and you need a plan in place, right? Like,
right.
That's what this is to me. Is like, this is the first large domino to really fall like this, where we're now seeing the reaction to the pricing thing where people are like, wait, Disney Plus is a subscription service. Why am I having to pay for this on top of this, right? And now we're getting to those questions, and it's because this industry needs any way to make money off of a movie they no longer can release and make money off of.
It's Disney specifically.
Yeah. You know? JR, I feel like you've been making some faces over there. Do you have some thoughts?
No, I mean, like, I've just been basically agreeing with what everything's been said so far. You know, I think it's, you know, in addition to cinema, it's also theater, it's live events, it's live music. It's you know, the entire entertainment industry has really taken a really serious hit by this. But I think it, you know, to Tom's point about now everyone's kind of looking at is sort of raising an eyebrow at price points and stuff. Like, I think that those are all still also valid concerns, in addition to everyone trying to figure out, like, okay, how do we save this industry? How do we keep, you know, all of the key grips and the best boys and the craft service people? Like, how do we keep them to have some place to come back to and to have the stuff they create and they help create once this, I don't want to say is all over, because who knows where we're at this point, but like when we do get back to some semblance of normalcy, at least here in the States, like what does that look like? And I sure as hell hope it's not a $30 rental on top of my subscription fee. You know, I feel like there's the two parts of that it's $30 and it's just a rental is the difficult pill for everyone to swallow. Like, I totally get why that's the case, because, you know, we were talking before we started rolling that, you know, there are multiple housemates who would normally go see a movie together, and, you know, instead of spending $70 at the movie theater between 3 or 4 people, like now it's 5 people who live in one house spending $30. Or, you know, I share my Netflix password with the rest of my family, don't tell anybody, but like now if I unlock this, like they then have access to this too. So it's a difficult business question for the companies producing this entertainment, to be sure, but it's also like, and then it's like, okay, cool, so I can watch it. Is it work like an Amazon thing? Like I can watch it like 3 times in 24 hours or twice in 18 hours. Like I think there's a lot that's unclear on that front.
Yeah, but I don't have a screen the size of a warehouse wall in my house. Like, that was always kind of why I was okay with paying the premium of like an actual movie theater visit, is that I got like a more elevated viewing experience that I can't get at home. So now being like, okay, I'm paying the same price, but I'm like doing it on my like own TV just feels like an analog that does not translate for everyone.
Yes. To your point though, also my dog is with me now, which is great.
Good counterpoint.
Yeah, no, as a father to a child, which is sort of like a dog, parents hate hearing that, but there's a lot of parallel.
But it's true.
It's true. This is fantastic news for me because it would have been hard for me to go to a movie theater anyway. So now my wife and I can just rent the movie. What is like interesting to me is, and I tweeted about this, but like there's an alternate dimensional world version of all this where COVID would have hit last year, and Avengers Endgame, which is the culmination of 11 or 12 years of a dozen plus movies, would have been in the running to be a Disney Plus rental, and then suddenly wouldn't have become the highest grossing film of all time. And so Avatar would still be number one inexplicably.
But like looking at that, like, do we think that if that had been the case, like if it was 2019 instead of 2020 that this happened, like would you have paid $30 to watch watch Avengers Endgame in your living room?
Oh yeah, and I think a million people would have. But the other option would have been that the movie got delayed. And so when I tweeted this, somebody said to me, that means that they maybe would have delayed Star Wars Episode 9, and it could have been better. And so that's when I was like, oh, because like,
but
it could have been better. PlayStation 5 next announcement reportedly scheduled for this month. It would be better if it was today. But seriously, so the news that we're talking about. The news that we're talking about is that there's a new report that claims that Sony plans to make new PlayStation 5 announcements this month. This month being August. When I read this, I thought it was July that they were referring to, but we are in fact in August. And Bloomberg says a PlayStation official. This like really cracks me up for some reason. So Bloomberg says a PlayStation official who remained anonymous as the plan isn't public, but like now it kind of is, explained Sony tentatively plans to make its announcement in August. There's no clarity as to when or what the announcement will be, but it does feel very likely that it will hopefully center around console price and release date. And this fits into Sony's recent statement saying pre-orders for the console won't come as a surprise, meaning that this could serve as an early warning for pre-orders. Man. Well, that's exciting. How you feeling, guys?
Yes.
It's good, right?
Yes. I just put the information out. Like we knew the price of both the Xbox One and the PS4, I believe within the same day on E3, the year that they were released. And E3 always takes place in June, as some of you may remember, back when things were normal. And we are now heading into August. They're doing a state of play on Thursday that is specifically not about new PS5 news. And so this is crazy. Like this we are now something potentially 12 to 16 weeks away from these consoles being released, and people don't know how much they'll cost. They don't know how much they should be saving right now. Like that's kind of insane to me. Like it's like this is a tight year financially for a significant amount of people, pretty much everybody, and to not even know what to expect this fall is like really crappy. So I hope we get something extremely soon.
Mm-hmm. So how much pressure does this put on Xbox? Like, do you think that we'll get an Xbox announcement the next day, week?
Well, that's the wild thing is the pressure is not. It's like the announcement wouldn't cause pressure. The announcement would be like a release of pressure, right? Like I feel like what's happening right now is it's a game of chicken, and they're both just waiting to see how long they can wait. And as soon as one goes, the other one has a lot more flexibility. And obviously the pressure will start mounting the longer they wait after that. But like as soon as if PlayStation announces their price and release date before Xbox, then suddenly Microsoft has however much time they want to take to see what they can do to respond, right? And like get their messaging perfect. And so I think that's part of the reasons everyone's been waiting is there's just so much uncertainty that they just want to like hold the line for a little bit.
Yeah. And not to mention like see like what their messaging can be, but like there's a very real chance that if this is, I have no inside actual information, like I don't have anyone or anything, but like there's that chance where it is that game of chicken, and whoever goes first, the person that then goes second can immediately start talking to their team and be like, okay, how much can we knock off our price to beat theirs?
Right.
Because even if it's just $50, like that could be a difference enough for someone making that hard decision.
That's almost a game, right? And so here's the thing too, and this is why this is more interesting than ever before. There's a potentially a chance for Microsoft to say, and there's rumors about this right now, where they say our online services are free now. And so right off the bat, you save $60 a year. There's also Game Pass, which means that on day one, any launch games that are coming through Game Pass, you're playing for free, basically, with the free subscription that they throw in the box. So if they throw in a month or 3 months, for the first time in video game history, since we've had pack-in games, you don't really have to buy a game on day one to play a video game on day one on your Xbox. They also have 2 SKUs, and that means that one of them is going to come in either slightly or significantly under the Series X. So they do get to say, if they, they will get the sort of like the verbal call out of being able to go, we're $100 cheaper than PS5 if one of their models is. That said, this is their, like, they have to put in the effort to win here because they are down significantly this generation. It seems anecdotally like all the excitement, or most of the excitement, is funneling towards PlayStation and the lineup of PlayStation games again. There was that thing going around recently, just sort of like, it's so gross, but it was like the brands that consumers love the most, and like PlayStation was number one for Gen Z and millennials. And so like I think that if they want to price it a little higher, maybe they can get away with that because they have a first party lineup that I think is a little more exciting right now. But Microsoft can come in with a lot of incentives that make their system seem like a much better deal, with free online, Game Pass included for 3 or 4 months in the box, and 2 different SKUs, which allows you to get into the ecosystem for $100 cheaper than their competition.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, go ahead, Tom.
The flip side of that coin, because I don't disagree with basically like a word you said, Brian. I absolutely think you're on point with all of that. But from like a different, like another perspective of it is, Sony showed their game showcase and a lot of people really, really liked it. And then Microsoft came out recently with their game showcase and people were like, okay, right? Like it wasn't bad by any means, but it also was like, didn't blow people away. So like the momentum, like you said, is with Sony in a lot of different ways. Like, and the public perception of it might just be that right now Sony is in a position to seal the deal in a real way, that they feel like maybe they are confident enough to just like go first and get the hype and keep it going. Right. And wrap all themselves.
Yeah. I think they benefited from having that pressure release all happen in one event, and then sort of like let out a little bit more after that. I thought Microsoft started off this conversation incredibly strong at the Game Awards by being like, this is the Series X. I was like immediately like, okay, I understand what this thing's trying to do. Is not trying to be the prettiest console ever made, but it's got a really cool design. It's just a big box, but it's going to be powerful as hell. They're going for the most powerful approach. And I feel like every subsequent sort of announcement after that has sort of just been like, oh, yeah, that's pretty cool. But like nothing really like, boom, that's why I'm buying this thing on day one. But they're playing a slightly different game. So I guess we'll see what happens. I think Sony benefited from being like, everyone waited, and they were like, here's the design of the system. Here's a bunch of first-party games that you'll be playing exclusively on next gen. And here's a bunch of studios working on stuff that you won't get to play for a long time. But, we're confirming a new Spider-Man, a new Horizon, blah, 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 blah. We got a Demon's Souls remake. Like, there was a bunch of really cool stuff in there. And so, yeah, it's just all about getting the next wave of information out and getting those pre-orders out there. And I think you're already going to start to see, the momentum start moving in one direction or the other.
Mm-hmm. I love One Direction.
Yes.
Okay. On that note, before we go, let's do a rapid fire, a game that I'm sure we've all played very many times at this point, which is, how much do we think the PlayStation 5 is and when will it release? Brian, let's start with you.
I think it's going to release on November 7th, and I think it's going to be $500.
Alrighty, Tom.
I think I said, what did I say before? November 12th?
I think you said the 12th, yeah.
Yeah, 1 week before Cyberpunk, exactly. And I think it'll be $500 and the digital edition will be $449.
Yeah.
JR?
I'm going to say Price is Right rules the 13th for the date that Friday going into the weekend. And yeah, I think probably I'm gonna guess $549 digital, $599 with the disc drive.
Ooh. Well, I hope you are wrong, to be honest.
I mean, look, me too. But I also.
But I am with you on. I think it's going to be November 13th, and I'm hoping / educated guessing $500 for $49 for the discless. And on that note, thank you so much, More, because we're More. News and games.
Yeah.
So from More, thank you. Okay, but in all seriousness, I'm so sorry. But also, we're back tomorrow, 4:00 Pacific time. Tune in every day, Monday through Friday. Thank you again, JR, Tom, and Brian, and myself, I guess. Have a wonderful night. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Bye, everyone.